I could have your attention. I'd like to call to order the Quincy School Committee Policy Subcommittee for Wednesday, January 22nd at 6:10 PM. Three members of the committee are present. We have one item pending before us, and it's the draft school committee policy review, item 5.5.7, motor vehicle idling on school grounds. This was, we did not have a policy for motor vehicle idling on school grounds. The language that we have before us is Mass Association of School Committees, and we vetted it, and it is ready to move forward. I don't know if there are any questions from my colleagues on the policy committee relative to the language before us. Mrs. Lebo.
No question, but I love to see this, absolutely love to see this, because I see it every single day when I pick up kids, there's lots of idling going on. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there, do we entertain a motion?
In a roll call motion.
Motion by Mrs. Cahill, seconded by Mrs. Lebo. Mr. Mulvey?
Mr. Gattro,
Yes.
Mrs. Cahill,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lebo.
Yes.
Thank you.
3 members voting affirmative. It moves on. It will be before the school committee at a subsequent meeting. With that, the policy committee is adjourned, just like that.
Okay, we'll call the Budget and Finance Subcommittee to order. Mr. Mullaney?
Yes, thank you. We have the results of the budget for the 6 months ended December 31st, 2024. I notice on the front page it says 3 months expended, but it is for the 6 months expended, 12/31.
Don't go through every line, Jim, just give us a...
Real quick, we go, for the teachers, we're in very good shape. For the professional staff, there was a lot of breakage and a lot of mid-year breakage. And we're anticipating surpluses in those 3 lines of academic teachers, academic programs, and instructional academic support. Have about a $1.3, $1.4 million surplus for this coming year. It'll be offset by several things later on. We have a deficit in the aids line. That's due to a lot of special education requirements, needing one-on-one and other requirements for students with IEPs. So we'll probably have about a $430,000 deficit in that. For the attendants, which are the bus monitors and the bus drivers, right now, we're looking at about a $675,000 surplus in those lines. We anticipate next year that we'll have a full staff complement with the settlement of the contract. So overall, we're looking at a revenue side, for the salary side, a surplus of $1,606,000 for the expense lines, we're looking at 2 major expense lines that we anticipate will be in deficit. The first being the tuition line. We're anticipating tuitions and outside agencies would be a deficit of about $1.5 million. And the same for the transportation. We've hired several new drivers, and we're hoping we'll be able to pull back some of the transportation on the outside vendors. But overall, we're looking for expenses, deficit of $2.6 million. What that leaves is a balance of $1,038,804. And that's going to be made up through circuit breaker. We budgeted $7.35 million. The actual reimbursement for this year is $8,388,804. So but balancing out the deficit between the revenues and the expenses, that'll bring us to 0 for the year. We're obviously going to closely monitor them because they can still keep moving either way, and would take a closer eye at some of the expenses to save on them. But for right now, we feel we're in pretty good shape to get through the year. So I don't know if anybody has any.
Any questions? Mrs. Lebo?
Just a quick question, Jim. Under the transportation line that's 1.5, is that because of our bus drivers too, partly?
It's
Because we had to go to
it's
her
two
student?
things. We had to go to an outside vendor we didn't have enough drivers for a lot more. And we have an awful lot, and their prices are going up. We have an awful lot of children outplacements, which is a lot. And we have some in-city special education transportation. So hopefully with the new hires, we'll be able to bring that back down. But it's very expensive for the
How many
transportation.
hires did you say, 7?
Excuse me?
How many hires did you say we had?
I think we've had 7 since
we settled the budget?
it's been settled, yeah. So we've got new routes. Kevin Segala has been working real hard, along with Mike Dracchio, to create new routes to
Nice.
pull back from the vendors. So, and we'll have our own people driving the students, and that's always a big plus.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Guttrow?
Jim, on the tuitions, do we expect that to change in FY '26 based on the DeCristofaro Learning Center?
No, we haven't increased the tuition line for 4 or 5 years. All the outplacements are going up. We've got notices quite often from the outside outplacements for reconstructed services. Their tuition lines are going up very high. What we've been able to do, and we're able to keep a lot of people in the city who would have been tuitioned out
Yeah.
with the promise of opening up this. And we have had people come back in, so it has saved us on some, but you wind up bringing 5 people back and you wind up with 3 people going out for other things, so,
That we didn't anticipate.
correct. And we had one really large one recently as well.
And do you anticipate that budget being the same proposed as this year?
I would assume we'd probably have to look at increasing that for FY '26.
Okay. And it's not because more outplacements, it's because cost of outplacements?
Cost is going up considerably.
Okay. And then, final question, maybe this is a companion piece to the budget, but when we do get the budget, or whenever you think the time is appropriate, can we get kind of a breakdown on expiring grants like ESSER?
Sure.
And so that we could see those that have gone or are going away this year, and how we might bridge that gap?
Yeah, because ESSER is gone now. I mean, that was a big help in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And we were able to use still about $1 million worth for this year through September, which really helped us out with our summer programs and other things. So it was a big help, but with less and less grants right now, it's just basically the entitlements. And everybody does do a good job. We get a bunch of small ones now. Erin's been working on a bunch like the CPPI one, which is a great grant that we've got now. So
Okay, great. Thank you.
What's that? Just a further clarification on that. I know in the meetings, and we have discussed with the DeCristofaro Center, we said it would take time before we saw that leveling off, because people that are out of district now weren't going to come back. We had some that come back, but those who are starting in the district will stay here.
Right, I got you.
So it's going to take some time.
Thank you.
and it's been a big effect right away, I think.
Okay.
Can I ask, do we have the summer program built into this budget?
No, that's next year's budget,
For the summer, that's right.
so it'll be after
Okay.
June.
Yep, okay, thank you.
What's that?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mulaney. Meeting's adjourned.
On. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the January 22nd, 2025 school committee meeting. Superintendent, roll call.
Mr. McNulty, Mrs. Cahill,
Present.
Mr. Gattro, Mrs. Hubley, Mrs. Lebo, Mrs. Perdios, Mayor Koch,
Present.
Quincy High School Student Representative Annabella Chin, and North Quincy High School Student Representative Anthony DeBella. Thank you both.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And there are no memoriams tonight, so we can continue. This is open forum, an opportunity for community input regarding the Quincy Public Schools. Community in this context is defined as a resident of the city of Quincy, a non-resident parent of a student who attends the Quincy Public Schools, or a non-resident employee of the Quincy Public Schools. After giving his or her name and address, each speaker may make a presentation of no more than 3 minutes to the school committee. An individual may not exchange their time or yield to others. Residents or non-community persons may submit written statements of up to 300 words to the school committee at qscopenforum@quincypublicschools.com by 4 p.m. of the day prior to the posted school committee regular meeting. Written statements will be posted on the school committee section of the Quincy Public Schools website by noon on the day of the posted school committee regular meeting. Is there anyone here for open forum?
Okay. Good evening. I'm Andy Pham from 154 Sumner Street. I was a Montclair Monarch Butterfly and then an Atlantic Admiral and then a JROTC Red Raider class of 2015. 2 weeks ago, I joined the group advocating for Lunar New Year to be recognized as a school holiday. And I was moved by the public commentary, but disappointed by the quick jump to the agenda with no acknowledgement. Even saying that we'll revisit this topic at another meeting would have been respectful to everyone who spoke that day. Now, I don't believe that this topic is about racism, as some have suggested. Quincy remains to be one of the best cities in the nation for Asians. And over the last few decades, the number of Asians in our schools and their value add to the city continues to trend forward and upward with no signs of slowing down. So I saw an article inside the Patriot Ledger saying that some of the committee members have consulted with other cities for their input, and other cities have said, that's crazy. Why would Lunar New Year be an official holiday? Well, Quincy's unique. We're uniquely Quincy. And if anything, we're the city of the presidents, city of 2 founding fathers. We should be setting the precedent based off of the data at hand that's been presented meeting after meeting. Now, some might worry that recognizing Lunar New Year might favor one ethnic group, but that's simply not true, because if you've been to an Asian restaurant and you've seen the zodiac wheel, you can find your year and you can kind of get the idea that, this is for everybody. It's actually one chance to kind of unite us all, because it's not just a holiday celebrated for Asians, but it's also a second chance for failed New Year's resolutions. Let's see. Lastly, I'm sure this committee remembers the Snowmageddon of 2015. I certainly do. That's my senior year. We probably missed about a month of school that year. But I'll speak from experience, and also your son, Mulaney. We turned out just fine by missing out all those days of school. And if anything, moving forward with Lunar New Year as an official Quincy Public Schools holiday aligns perfectly with our city's identity, which is proud, inclusive, and forward-thinking. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Good. Okay, thank you. On to superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. First item on the agenda tonight is student recognitions. And the first item is DECA recognition. DECA stands for Distributive Education Clubs of America, and they present awards to students throughout the nation, including Quincy. At the recent DECA district competition, 40 students from North Quincy and Quincy High School's business programs received grand awards for team writing projects, role play, exams, and team decision-making in the areas including marketing, principles of business, entrepreneurship, and accounting applications. This qualified them to progress to the State Development Conference competition on February 27th. Of course, we wish them the best of luck. Congratulations to these students. Their preparations produced amazing results. Thanks also to the staff who supported the students before and during the competition. And DECA is a nationwide career and technical education student organization whose focus is preparing emerging leaders and entrepreneurs for careers in marketing, finance, hospitality, and management. Again, congratulations to these students and best of luck on February 27th. Staff recognition. Congratulations to Quincy Public Schools elementary physical education teacher and North Quincy High School boys varsity basketball coach Kevin Barrett, who coached his 200th win on January 3rd, moving into first place on the all-time win list for the program. And I know Mr. Bergoli, who could not be here tonight, wanted to express his congratulations as well to Coach Barrett, as Coach Barrett was Mr. Bergoli's assistant coach for many, many years. So again, congratulations to Coach Kevin Barrett for this accomplishment. Next is the kindergarten registration for the 2025-2026 school year. It is currently underway with the online link for families to pre-register posted on the Quincy Public Schools website and social media. Pre-registered families will be contacted by school secretaries and central registration beginning on February 3rd to schedule registration appointments. Over 230 families have already pre-registered their students as we begin the process of welcoming the QPS class of 2038, which is amazing. Next week, all grade 8 students will learn about the basics of CPR in their health classes through the Matter of Heart initiative. On Saturday, February 1st, grade 8 students are invited to attend a free American Heart Association CPR AED certification course. Thanks to Health Services Coordinator Andrea Hewer, Director of Academic Programs Larry Taglieri, middle school health educators, and partner Brewster Emergency Medical Services for their support of this very important initiative. Upcoming Quincy Public Schools events include the following. Cultural fairs will be held at Point Webster Middle School on January 24th and at Snug Harbor Community School on February 13th. These events are wonderful ways for students and families to share about the traditions of their homes, including celebrations and, of course, their food. On Saturday, January 25th, the grade 8 ambassadors from our middle schools will participate in the Project 351 Day of Service with grade 8 students from all over Massachusetts. This is the 15th year our students have participated in this program and volunteered at programs like Cradles to Crayons and Project Bread. The students will be invited to an upcoming school committee meeting to be recognized. Mayor Koch will be giving the annual State of the City address on Monday, January 27th at 10:30 a.m. in the Great Hall in Historic City Hall. The Quincy High School STEM Fair will be held on Tuesday, February 4th, and North Quincy High School will host theirs on Thursday, February 6th, both starting at 5:30 p.m. Members of the community are invited to volunteer as a judge for either or both STEM Fair events, and links to the sign-up for judging are found on the QPS website and social media. Broad Meadows Middle School's Drama Club is presenting Something Rotten on February 6th February 6th and 7th at 7 p.m. Again, February 6th and 7th at 7 p.m. and February 8th at 2 p.m., all in the Broad Meadows Middle School auditorium. And finally, Quincy's Early College High School Pathway Symposium will be held on Friday, February 7th at 9 a.m. at the Boston Marriott Quincy. Early College High School Pathway students, high school and Quincy College faculty, members of the superintendent's leadership team, and staff from the State Street Foundation and RTI International will participate in the morning's activities, along with Mayor Koch and the Massachusetts Secretary of Education, Patrick Tutwiler. School committee members have also been invited to attend. Please RSVP at the link that was mailed to you if you haven't already. So with that, that concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you. In old business, we have 3 policy items to move forward to a February 12th meeting. Mr. Guttrow?
Madam Vice Chair. First item, there are 3 items that we discussed in Policy Committee. The first is a matter, Section 9.2, which is a proposed revision of the school committee policy book section. It's essentially the language that provides the framework for what a calendar would look like. And we incorporated some of the changes, I think, that were suggested both by MASC as well as recommendations by the subcommittee, which said that we should stipulate that school starts after Labor Day and that it recognizes federal, state, municipal contractual holidays, and vacation periods. This was taken up and advanced affirmatively by the Policy Subcommittee, so I put that before you as a motion for adoption. Is that a second or a motion for adoption? Oh, for discussion, excuse me. So we're not taking a formal vote tonight? Okay, next week.
The 12th, next meeting on the 12th.
Excuse me. So it's up for discussion if there,
To whoever. Thanks. I just had a couple questions on this. So under item number 1 on this policy, it says that the school calendar shall have at least 185 school days for each school in the district, and then items 2 and 3 say a minimum of 180 days. And it feels like that's either a conflict or something I'm not understanding why we have 185 in one place and 180 in another. So that's one of my couple questions.
So you have to build in 5 snow days.
Okay.
Required to build in 5 snow days in the calendar.
Should that be,
That would have to occur before July 1st, so it has to be.
okay, should we put that in there? Because otherwise, I think it's a little confusing as to why we have 185 in one place and 180 in another. Maybe we could say with 5 school days built in or something, just to so someone would understand that.
It says will operate for a minimum of 180 days, and we have to say, we have to have 185 days to be included in the calendar.
Right, I understand because you're explaining it, but if someone's just reading this policy, I don't think they're going to understand what the discrepancy in that 5 days is. So I'm just suggesting maybe we put something in there that just says
after item
why.
1 that says 185 school days and in parentheses, which includes 5 snow days.
Something like that, or,
Are they called snow days, Laura?
I would use cancellation days because it could be canceled for any reason. It
Because
could
we
be
don't know why they can't. I
a
wouldn't call them
hurricane,
snow
it could
True
be,
story, yeah.
maybe like which includes a mandatory 5 cancellation or possible, something like that.
to.
I'm not, up to, I'm not sure what language, but just some explanation as to why there's 2 different days, because I was confused by it. So that was question 1. Question 2 I had, so in items 2 and 3 here, it says that time which a student spends receiving school services and participating in optional school programs does not count toward meeting the minimum structured learning time requirement for that student. But if a student's receiving EL services during the day, that does count toward it, does it not? So I'm not sure that that's true. Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay, so this is actually the wording of the state's regulation. The items 2 and 3 are the actual wording of the state's regulation.
We don't have to adopt that if it seems like it's incorrect, though, right?
I definitely would recommend adopting the regulation as written, as the state has it. I wouldn't want to divert from that.
So what school services would a student receive that
Like the
wouldn't
nurse-
count?
The nurse doesn't count, if the student's in the nursing office, it doesn't count.
Okay,
If
all right.
If they're in a guidance office, it doesn't necessarily count.
Okay.
It's not instructional.
So it's not receiving like instructional services. It's, what about like PT or OT?
I don't know, I don't think that would count either. No, would that count?
Yeah, I would say if that's directed by an IEP, that would be considered a school service.
Right. I feel like that's misleading in here, so I'm a little uncomfortable with that. And I'm not really sure what optional school programs would mean. I mean, so my kiddo takes band and it happens at Point Webster during the middle of the day, but that counts. That's an optional school program, but that counts toward her structured learning time. So again, I feel like we have things in here that actually do count toward it, so it's misleading to me. So I'm not sure we should include something that we can already find holes with. I don't know how everyone else feels about.
But that's structured learning time. The band is structured learning time. It's one of our courses.
Right, but why, that's an optional school program. According to what this says, it wouldn't count.
No, I don't think that's, I think it would count.
Okay. So I just wanted to bring those concerns up because that seems like we shouldn't, it seems like maybe we should explain that a bit better. Maybe not take it out, but maybe explain that a bit better. And my third question would be with the federal, state, municipal, and contractual holidays and vacation periods. The last sentence there, I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't read the whole sentence.
Number 3?
No, actually, the very, very end. For the information of staff, students, and parents, guardians, the calendar will set forth the days schools will be in session, early release days, and federal, state, municipal, and contractual holidays and vacation periods. So that's just saying that the calendar will set those. Is that correct?
Correct.
It has to
Okay,
show
it's
that-
not saying that we're doing it in response to, it's just saying that the calendar will set that.
Show those.
Okay, that I don't have a problem with. Okay, so that clarification is okay. I still remain, if we're going to adjust the 180, if we're going to make a notation about the 185 days, I think that, I'm fine with that. This receiving school services and participating in optional school programs, I still kind of maintain that that should be at least further explained so that it's not confusing as to what we're talking about. If someone's getting IEP or has a potential IEP to accept, that could be confusing to them, that if their child receives some of those services, they may think, well, maybe that doesn't count toward their structured learning time. I can only assume that that would make it more confusing for the special ed team when they're trying to implement IEPs if we have something that says students receiving school services wouldn't count toward that. So I would be in favor of articulating that better or differently.
So receiving non-instructional school services, would that work for you?
Yeah,
Yeah, but those are written by,
yep. And participating in,
I wouldn't change it.
I don't know what optional school programs there would be.
So didn't we get this language right from MASC? Is this what it's in?
from
Yes.
regulation.
It's the state regulation about student learning time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so Mass, it came from DZ and Mass.
So obviously smarter people than us, is that what we're saying? We'll accept it because they're,
Well,
They-
we have to submit documentation that this calendar meets this.
Okay.
And we do every year.
okay. I just think it's confusing and a little misleading. I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
So do we want to entertain a motion to amend at least the first sentence that says to include at least 185 school days, and then in parens, which includes 5 cancellation days in parens for each school in the district?
Maybe, I
think
don't
this-
really
I-
want to change this language. Maybe we can just put a dot there and put something down the bottom of the thing
Like a asterisk and a footnote?
that says, yeah.
Any objection to that?
I would rather not change their language. I'd feel better doing that.
So it'll say including 5 school cancellation days.
Yes, which would include
to.
5.
Up to.
Or not more than, right?
I mean, I think
Right.
the
it has
the
to have-
school committee shall schedule a school year which includes at least 185 school days for each school in the district. So we have to schedule 185 days. And the elementary, secondary are required to do 180. So, I mean, I think it's clear the way it is, to be honest. But,
Yeah.
know.
I just think that it could be, why would we schedule 185 if we only need 180? I don't know if people would understand
Yeah.
that it includes.
Well, if nobody has an objection to the
right.
asterisk and the footnote,
Perfect.
do we need a motion on that in a second and a vote, or no? Yes?
Just roll
So I'll
call
put
vote,
that
please.
in the form of a motion.
Second it.
Put an asterisk next to that with the definition down below. Is that what we're doing?
I can't hear you.
yeah,
The asterisk.
yes.
Asterisk,
Not changing the language, we're just putting an asterisk.
correct.
Yeah. I'll second.
Okay.
There's been a motion and a second. You want to call the roll?
Roll call. Mr. Begoli, Mrs. Cahill,
Yes.
Mr. Gattro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubley, Mrs. Lebo?
Yes.
Mrs. Perdios?
Yes.
And Mayor Koch? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we let that sit, Laura, for the next meeting? Okay. The second item is the actual QPS schools calendar, which was discussed at a recent policy committee meeting. And I just want to take the opportunity to say to Andy, who's in the audience that was kind enough to testify, that members of the committee are precluded to respond directly to some of the comments. So after open forum, even though it seems odd and awkward, we're eternally grateful. So a lot of the comments that come in to us can pertain to budgetary issues, can pertain to policy issues, can pertain to operational issues, incidents. And there are other times that testimony is unrelated to anything on the agenda, and it prompts us as members maybe to introduce something later on. So we're all extremely grateful, even though it doesn't seem like we're acknowledging it. We hear and appreciate all the testimony that comes in. This is the school committee calendar for 2025, 2026 that you have before you. It was voted out of policy subcommittee, which is a committee of 3, and now sits before the full committee for a vote. So any discussion on this?
Not a vote.
Not a vote. Vote at the next meeting, but discussion tonight. Yes.
Thank you. I just want to, again, voice my disappointment that we as a body for another year have not addressed the many, many parents and teachers and staff who have had another year who have come before us to ask us to support having Lunar New Year as a QPS holiday on our school calendar. As much as I appreciate Mr. Guttrell's comments that we can't address that particular meeting that Mr. Pham was referencing, the way it was set up, the open forum happened after the policy subcommittee meeting, but we have had many previous meetings to that where many, many people have come and spoke this year. So there was no discussion at that policy subcommittee, which was very disappointing to me personally, as well as all the parents and the educators and the staff who have all come to us to tell us how important this is to them and to the majority of our school body, our student body. So I'm just remain disappointed that we as a body can't have a conversation about it with more than 1 or 2 of us in support. And I'm just sorry to the community that has come out for another year to try to get us to convince us to do this. I remain in favor of supporting having Lunar New Year on the calendar as a school holiday. Thank you.
Additional discussion? Nope. Okay. The third item that we have before us is the Quincy School Committee meeting calendar for 2025, 2026. This was discussed at the policy committee meeting we have in front of us. Dates ranging from September 10th, 2025 to June 10th, 2026. This came out again affirmatively out of the policy subcommittee, and it's an opportunity for the full committee to weigh in. Any comments, questions, concerns about the dates for the school committee meeting dates 2025, 2026? Seeing none?
No discussion? No.
So this item sits, and we'll cast a vote at a subsequent meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that wraps up policy committee report outs.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have new business, which is the QPS graduation requirements and competency determination by Dr. Perkins and Mr. Marani.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight to talk about some of the changes that were recently voted in at the recent election. And so we are going to go through what happened, how it impacts us, and then make some recommendations for how we should move forward. So our agenda for tonight is we are going to overview the current Quincy Public Schools graduation requirements for you, just to give you a little background and make sure everyone understands what the current graduation requirements are. We are going to provide a competency determination overview. We'll explain what that means and how this is impacted, what the changes are and how they impact that competency determination and us in general. We do have proposed amendment language for you to consider tonight, and we also are going to talk with you about the impact that this is going to have, not only on the current senior class, the class of 2025, but also the juniors, the class of 2026. And then we also have to think about how this impacts the students who have already graduated, or received a certificate of attainment. So the class of 2024 and before. Some students in those classes that did not receive a diploma are absolutely impacted by this new statute. We will also provide you with how this impacts the MCAS moving forward and give you a little bit of an update on that. And then, of course, any questions or comments, we're happy to answer them. So the QPS current graduation requirements, in order to earn a diploma in Quincy Public Schools, there are a couple of parts. The first part is the competency determination, which you can see up there. And you'll see the part that we highlighted in red for you. So the competency determination is something that students earn in 10th grade, and it reflects their competency in terms of how they are performing on math, science, and English language arts. It is based on the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks, and so students basically need to demonstrate mastery of the standards at a 10th grade level in the areas of math, English language arts, and science, and they previously have done that through the MCAS assessment. In addition, we have other requirements that are separate from the competency determination. So we have points that students need to earn in order to graduate at both of our schools. And we also have required courses that are also in place that students need to complete in order to graduate from Quincy Public Schools. And then in the bottom, you will see in our current policy as written right now, there is a sentence that talks about certified special education students who, in the judgment of the principal, have completed the objectives as set forth in their individual education plans, and they are typically granted a certificate of attainment. And we will talk a little bit about that as we move forward. Oh, that jumped, I think. We're on the graduation. Yeah. So in addition, we just put, there is you do have actually in front of you also, you have a copy of the updated policy that we're proposing tonight, which does, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it includes the entire language. So we did provide for you some snippets here because there are some other requirements that we did not include tonight, like physical education, community service. Those are also graduation requirements. We're not talking about those things this evening, but we did just want to point out that part of our language is this section that students can also earn their graduation or complete their graduation requirements by completing things like summer school, alternative programs, credit recovery. So those things, as long as they're courses that are approved by the district and approved by the individual schools, principals, then those students can either recover credits that they may have missed because they have failed a class, or earn credits, through courses like that. But in terms of our course requirement, we require in Quincy 4 years of English, 4 years of social studies, 3 years of science, 3 years of mathematics, 2 years of world language, and 4 years of physical education. And so those are our current requirements to graduate from Quincy Public Schools, in addition to the competency determination. So I think the thing that we just want to point out is that they are, even currently, they are two different things. So you have your course requirements, your point requirements that you need to graduate from Quincy Public Schools, and then separate from that is your competency determination. And so the competency determination is what it says right now, and you'll see the part in the red is the part that is currently changing on the slide. So the competency determination, as I already mentioned to you, it's based on the academic standards and curriculum frameworks for 10th grade. It's in the areas of math, science, science technology is one area, history, social science, foreign languages, and English, and it shall represent a determination that a particular student has demonstrated mastery of a common core skill, competency, and knowledge in these areas. And you see the strike through as measured by assessment instruments described in section 1. So that is currently changing. The red part there says by satisfactory completing coursework that has been certified by the student's district as showing mastery of the skills, competencies, and knowledge contained in the state academic standards and curriculum frameworks in the areas measured by the MCAS high school test described in Section 1, administered in 2023, and in any additional areas determined by the board. So that is the new language that was just voted in. So the strike through is what was originally there, the white strike through, the red language is now in place. That was voted in and went into effect, I think, December 5th. So in addition, this obviously, you see the bottom part there that students have to satisfactorily have completed the competency determination in order to graduate from high school. So some of the changes you'll see on this slide. So this was previously a 10th grader needed to do in that white box, they had to do those things. So they had to, in order to pass the ELA MCAS assessment, they had to get a 472 or higher. They could also score between a 455 and a 471, and they would have to complete what was called an educational proficiency plan. So that is something that the high schools would work with the students, and they would identify, okay, you got a 460 on the ELA assessment, so in order to earn your competency determination, you need to take English 11 and English 12, and you have to pass it. And so students oftentimes that didn't meet the 472, we call them an EPP, would be placed on an EPP, and those students would then complete those courses and therefore then before graduation have earned their competency determination. In mathematics, in order to pass for mathematics previously on the MCAS, students would have had to earn a 486 or higher. They could be on an EPP with a 469 through a 485. So if they earned a 471 in math, the school could have put them on an educational proficiency plan and said you need to pass Algebra 2 and geometry or something like that in order to earn your competency determination. In science, there is not an educational proficiency plan, but students would have needed in the new science test, not the legacy. The legacy score is up there for you. But in the new science assessment, in biology, they could take either biology and pass or physics. So they have to pass one. So they would pass biology with the 467 or physics with the 470. So that was the previous regulations and what we had followed up until December 5th. And so there is obviously some consideration. So any student who took the MCAS last year, last spring, anybody who passed the MCAS prior to December 5th, 2024, if you are an 11th grader or a 12th grader and you took that MCAS and you passed, you have met your competency determination. You are all set, and we will talk about that. But what we have considerations for is obviously those students who did not pass the MCAS before December 5th, 2024 in the class of 2025. So our current seniors right now that did not pass and have not passed an MCAS assessment or one or more of the MCAS assessments, those are the students that we're concerned about, and where we will talk, Mr. Marani will talk a little bit about that, because those are the students that we need to review to make sure that they have met or have earned or have the opportunity to earn a competency determination. And we'll talk about what that will look like. We obviously are also concerned about the students who are in high school. So we are concerned, and the juniors and the seniors are our primary concern right now because those are the immediate need. But just in general, we have to just make sure we have a plan for how our students who are currently in high school, our 9th and 10th graders, now that the MCAS no longer earns them a competency determination, what are we doing for those students? Those students are definitely a group that we are, concerned with. And then in the long term, the students not yet in grade 9, obviously, less of a concern, but still something that, we have been talking about. Not on the slide, but I do just want to mention because it definitely is a concern and something we have talked extensively about, and I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is for the students who already finished high school but did not get a diploma, they are now, if they have met what we will talk about in the next slide, the new competency determination, they are now eligible for a diploma. And we'll talk about that. So here, and as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you have the entire language of the policy in front of you. So I just took what we are proposing to change here, Mr. Marani and I, and put this on the slide. But in front of you, you have it, how it would actually look on our website from start to finish, and what we're proposing to strike through and the new language that we're adding. So our new language, our new proposed amendment is for those students who are our seniors and our juniors, our students who had taken the MCAS prior, as I mentioned, prior to December 5th, 2024. They are done. They have met their competency determination. They obviously still do need to meet all the other graduation requirements, but they have earned their competency determination. But in order to, from now on, moving forward, to earn your competency determination, you will need, if you have not already met it because you took the MCAS prior to December 5th, you will need to pass English 9 and English 10, Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. And we did this on purpose. We spent a lot of time talking about algebra and Algebra 2. We do have students who are in the advanced placement track who come out of Central already having passed Algebra 1. And so that's why we put Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, because we do have a group of freshmen who come in ninth grade and are in Algebra 2. So Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, geometry, you will have to have passed, and biology, conceptual biology, or physics. So any one of those three classes to earn your competency determination, you will have to have taken that class and passed. We do have a sentence underneath there, a little caveat that says Quincy Public Schools reserves the right to substitute any courses for the above stated courses, provided they fully align with the appropriate Mass Curriculum Framework standards and the state law regarding competency determination. And we did that in particular because one of the groups that we are concerned about is our EL students. Our EL students do not typically, if they are a level 1 fluency, they are not taking English 9 and 10. They are taking EL1, EL2. So we do really feel strongly that we need some freedom there to assess students a little bit differently, to make sure that we're being fair and equitable, and that we're not discriminating against a student because of their language ability. And so for students in the class of 2027 and beyond, a successful competency determination requires passing the coursework that were identified above, or if you did not pass the MCAS prior to December 5th, 2024, you will have to pass these classes in order to earn your competency determination. So we do have some other language here, just to hopefully protect the district against any disputes, things like that. But we do have that, again, which is similar to our old language, that students who do not meet the required passing grades in the above prescribed courses may enroll in summer school, Quincy Evening High School, goals, credit recovery courses, or be scheduled to take additional coursework by their guidance counselors that meet the same Mass Curriculum Framework standards. These opportunities will provide a student who has yet to meet the CD requirements additional opportunities to meet the standard for graduation. So obviously we want all of our kids to get a diploma, and we try to provide as many opportunities as possible in order to do that. And then in the event that a student transfers, so we do have students who transfer in through high school, we felt it was important to make sure that we were considering them in this policy, into Quincy Public Schools at any point during their high school career. A transcript review will be conducted to ensure that the coursework from the previous school is aligned with the Quincy Public Schools program of studies for the CD and graduation requirements. So we would, because we have students that move in from other countries, we have students that move in from other cities and towns, so we would conduct, or the guidance counselors in the schools would conduct a transcript review to say, okay, this student did complete English 9. We can cross that off. They don't need to retake that, which they do now anyways in order to assess where they are in terms of their graduation requirements. And then, in addition, we have some additional proposed language for our special education students. So we are proposing language that says the district, and this actually was based on advice and guidance from Murphy Hesse Toomey. So they issued an advisory, and a lot of these things we also took from them as well. So the district will conduct a status review of competency determination and graduation eligibility of students who attend an in-district or out-of-district special education program. All special education students will review their graduation status, including the competency determination and IDEA provisions, with their special education team. So that already does happen at in an IEP meeting prior to graduation. The team is already, by statute, by regulation, supposed to review what that student needs in order to be eligible for graduation. So that already does actually exist and happen. And then we did put some resolution dispute in here. So in instances when a high school diploma is denied, students and/or parents or guardians may file an appeal. The superintendent or his or her designee will serve as the arbitrator to resolve such disputes. And so I do just want to, we've looked at probably upwards of 20 different policies. We've looked at Worcester, Framingham, Everett, cities that do, we would say do compare to ours. We've looked at smaller towns like Barnstable. So we've looked at lots of different policies. We've been in communication with other area superintendents and assistant superintendents. And I do just need to thank Mr. Marani, Chris Tierney, and Dan Pacho, who, have become my team right now. We have met extensively on this, looked at this all different ways. We met with both high school teams. So we met with the principals, the assistant principals, the department heads for guidance, and the department heads for special education. So we have done all this in order to kind of get to this point to propose this language for you tonight. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Marani, who will talk about how this is going to impact our students.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Good evening, everybody. So as we develop this proposed language that Dr. Perkins just shared with you, during that planning process, we needed to consider the impact on students who have already taken the high school MCAS test. So this is somewhat of a short-term issue in that, in the next 2 years, we'll get to a place where every class thereafter will be okay as far as this policy will apply to all of them. But until then, we have to make sure the students in our classes of 2025 and 2026 are able to have their educational process resolved and a fair opportunity to get their competency determination. So the first thing we had to do to understand the impact was identify the students who have not yet earned their CD via their MCAS. So, and that's any MCAS prior to December 5th, 2024. So that number, after we looked at that, was a total of 468 students whom did not meet the competency determination in at least one subject area. Now, of those 468, I just want to add again, that's grade 11, grade 12 across the district. So that's both high schools. So now, of those 468, as we went through, looked at the transcripts of those students, started to identify the subject areas that may be holding them back from getting their competency determination, we saw that 241 of those students are on an EPP, which means, as Dr. Perkins mentioned, they've reached a minimum score with their MCAS, and therefore all they need to do to successfully achieve their or earn their CD is to complete their EPP. So 241 students are already on the path, if they're not already there, at competency determination. So once we remove those 241 students, we're down to 227 students that still we have to kind of dig in and figure out what do those students need to earn their CD. So out of the remaining 227 students, 78 of those students already met their competency determination, assuming this language is approved, right? So under this proposed language, 78 students would be already earning their competency determination based on their course completion, right? Based on this new proposed policy amendment language. Now, that leaves us with 149 other students that have not met their CD by either passing their MCAS prior, as late as fall of 2024 or prior, or completing the appropriate coursework. So I do just want to specify, of that 149 students, 105 of those are grade 11 students, and 44 of those students are grade 12. So obviously that's important because when we look at these students, knowing that they have the remainder of this year and next year, that gives them more course pathways to get to their competency determination versus our seniors, our grade 12 students. There's a little bit more urgency because we want to try and get them as much support as possible to wrap up this year successfully with their CD underway. So that's where we're at right now, is going through each of those students and identifying what it is that's preventing them. So if it could be just simply one course. So it could be just a biology course that's standing in the way. In other words, that student never passed the biology MCAS, and therefore successful completion of biology or an equivalent could be the only step needed for that student to achieve. And quite honestly, the nice part about all of this is a lot of these actions that are required, both schools take these actions anyways. So whenever we have students that might be struggling on MCAS, we're aligning their coursework accordingly anyways. So it's not too much of a shift of our practice, other than making sure year after year we're monitoring who has CD and who doesn't, versus before when it was MCAS, you just got a list from DESE and you knew right away who didn't have it, who did. So it's just going to be on us to make sure we identify per the coursework who has earned their competency determination. So that's going to be a future step that we'll need to take on a regular basis each year. The final point I want to mention is that the 149 students that I'm referring to, we still need to review the fall 2024 retest data. So we do anticipate that 149 student number going down, because we just recently got those fall retest results. So we have to go through those results. And for example, if a student passed ELA and that was the only test holding them back from competency determination, then they're done. They've gotten their competency determination. So that's part of this process. So regardless of that outcome, it will absolutely focus on making sure that we're communicating with those students, with their families accordingly. So in other words, if a student doesn't have competency determination because of MCAS, but now does because of coursework, we'll make sure they're informed. But again, we can't share this till we have this policy approved and formalized. So that would be our next step, is making sure that students know where they stand. And for the students that are struggling to obtain or earn the competency determination, providing them with the pathways to get there. And as Dr. Perkins mentioned, that could include summer programming, credit recovery courses, Quincy Evening High School, things of that nature, those supports that we already have in place, but making sure we inform those students and their families of their options to get to that point. So in addition to classes of 25 and 26, we also wanted to look at students who have completed high school, but with a certificate of attainment. So just to be clear on what a certificate of attainment is, this is essentially students who successfully completed their coursework, but they did not pass one or more of their MCAS. So they can't, based on past practice, right, based on past policy and law, those students couldn't earn a diploma. So now what we need to do as a district is look at our classes of 2024 and prior, identify former students who have earned the certificate of attainment, so we already have those lists. Then we have to review those transcripts. If they've completed the coursework, if this policy language were approved, we would then be notifying them, you now qualify for a diploma, right? Because they've now met the new revised competency determination language. And if that was the only stipulation that prevented them from a diploma, that is now resolved. So the table on your right is just a quick data, a snapshot of how many former students this is impacting, right? So in 2024, 16 students, 2023, 10. I do just want to point out, because it stands out, when you look at 2022 down to 2020, the numbers are a lot lower. You may or may not remember there were some modifications to competency determination during that COVID period. So that's why you see that kind of that dip in that numbers. And obviously, as you go further back, you see the numbers start to kind of increase again. But we'll continue to monitor this to make sure that if there are students who have completed their coursework and finished high school with a certificate of attainment, and if they do now qualify for the diploma, once this language is approved, we'll then do some outreach to make sure that they can get their diploma. So our next steps, in addition to some of the items that I just mentioned, we hope to have this updated policy amendment moved to the policy subcommittee on February 5th, at which point we hope to have this policy amendment approved by each of you, by school committee. Once we have that approval, we can then begin to update our program of studies. So we really have to kind of put a pin on the program of studies because we need to update our language to make sure that it is up to date and current. And then, of course, once we land on formal language, then we want to post and share the policy to the QPS website, make sure we have translated versions of this so that the community members that are impacted and, quite frankly, all stakeholders are aware of this change, and making sure that we're doing this not just within the website, but making sure we're doing our outreach with our parent-teacher organizations, our PTOs throughout the city. And then just as far as an MCAS update, I will be sharing after this presentation additional items regarding MCAS, but we decided to leave these items in here because they directly relate to high school. And I think with this recent ballot question outcome, there's been some confusion among people as to whether or not MCAS is still a test and if it's required. So we just wanted to kind of clear that up and make sure everybody knows. So participation is still very much required, as it always has been. And that is a legal mandate. So there is state law that says we have to facilitate this MCAS and students have to participate in this MCAS. So even though the competency determination is no longer a part of the MCAS, the participation of this MCAS is still required. And as a result, it will still be in both district and school accountability. So if you remember, when you look at the school improvement plans, you see, when you look at the accountability tables, the percentage of students that participated. So you want that number. I mean, MCAS across the board, grades 3 all the way up through 10, on the part of Quincy has always been strong. We want to keep it that way. So typically you see 98, 99% participation. We're hoping to get that, if not higher. So we just want to make sure people know that this doesn't now make it an optional test. It is still very much required, and it is absolutely something that will be used as districts are, compared. We often refer to, here's how the state performed, here's how we performed. That's still a factor in this 10th grade MCAS. So that's still important to acknowledge. None of this language that we're proposing, none of the ballot result or the legal change impacts the award programs that are tied to the MCAS. So we have the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship in place that has been in place. That is still in place, and the criteria does not change. So that's, I believe it's top 25% within the district, and one of those tests needs to be advanced while the other two need to be proficient or higher. In addition, we have the Stanley Z. Koplik Certificate of Mastery Award that is contingent, as one of the factors is MCAS, and then the State Seal of Biliteracy. So these are all still tied, as they have been, to MCAS, so that's obviously important to note. And then, we just wanted to comment on the retests. The big question is, well, if competency determination is no longer associated with MCAS, will retests continue on? So we just wanted to clarify that one. So February and March retests are scheduled, and we will be offering those. We will be doing some outreach to the students who would have been registered, but letting them know, one, if they already received their competency determination because of the new policy, depending on the timing of the approval, well, then they wouldn't need to take it. They already have the competency determination. The thing I want to specify is that students cannot earn their competency determination for either of these retests, so February and March. So the incentive for those students to take these retests would be more around some of those award programs that we looked at, and not so much for competency determination. So it's just important to say that we will be offering it. So if there is a unique reason that a student wants to participate, we have it available. But at the same time, we do anticipate a decrease in the amount of students that would be participating in that. And then the other piece I just want to mention for upcoming school years, DESE is still looking at what the retest options are going to be. starting next school year and beyond. So if I'm not mistaken, they have committed to at least the fall round of retests for next year, but we're not 100% sure what that's going to look like beyond, whether or not it's even necessary or not. So more information, more to be determined on that, but we at least wanted to, keep everybody up to date on the status of that MCAS update.
It would be, I hope that tonight you would vote to advance the policy that's before you to the February 5th policy subcommittee meeting. And then because of the timeliness of this, the fact that we needed obviously to get information out to families and as well to use it to do our program of studies, that we ask that you would vote on this policy and waive your policy on making policy changes so that your vote on February 12th would take effect immediately. So that we could get it out to families and begin working on a POS. Otherwise, we'd be looking at a March date or beyond for implementation. So the idea would be you can review the policy, obviously, tonight all the way through February 5th. We'll make any changes that you think are necessary on February 5th, and then hopefully the committee would vote to advance it to the full committee on February 12th, and there take a vote to approve the policy, but also a separate vote to waive your policy on policy changes so that it could take effect immediately.
You know what he means? Yeah, I do. Okay, no, because I know. So it doesn't have to sit for a month.
Correct.
Then we can vote on it right away.
Especially where there's not 2 meetings in February.
Right, and it can't sit, then it will go to March. Okay. Okay, questions?
Is that me? Sorry, okay. Am I on? Just to stick with the timeline. So could the policy subcommittee meeting on February 5th be a meeting of the whole, so that discussion that normally would have happened on the 12th could happen at subcommittee, and then we can vote on the 12th? Would that be okay?
I don't have any objection.
Okay.
Thank you for that, appreciate that. So, and I don't really foresee having too many problems with the policy. It looks like you guys have vetted it. It just, gives an opportunity to think about it a little bit. Thank you for putting all this work in. I know how much this kind of upheaved everything, this decision, which, I think is good ultimately. I think it just caused a lot of upheaval. So thank you for working this through. I'm really excited for those 42 kiddos that graduated since or that left school since 2018 that now may be eligible for a diploma. I think that's fantastic. I think that's going to help their life if it does work out for them. Couple questions I had. So, and I'm sorry, the pages aren't numbered, so I'm not going to really be able to reference very well, but the current graduation requirements that list students must pass 4 years of English, 4 years of social studies, 3 years of science and math, 2 of world language, and 4 of physical education. So that says currently that they must pass that.
Yes.
And now, in the proposed, we're saying they only need to pass English 9 and English 10, Algebra 1 or 2, and geometry, and biology, conceptual biology, or physics. So it looks like we're decreasing the amount of classes they need to pass. Is that correct?
That's actually a really good question. So there are 2 separate things. So you have your graduation requirements, which are the ones that you see here. So there's 2 separate components to graduating. There's your competency determination, and there's all your other graduation requirements. So what you're reading, the 4 years of English, those are all your others. So you still have to do that. This is in addition to that. So there've always been 2 things, but it was always MCAS gave you your competency determination. You earned that in grade 10, but you still had to pass 4 years of English, 3 years of math, or whatever, whatever it says there, 4 years of social studies, 3 years of science. So you always have had to do that. But in addition, you earn this thing called your competency determination, which basically just says you are a competent human. You can go out into the world and you are able to function at a 10th grade level in ELA, math, and science. And so that's what you're earning basically. And so now, because they removed MCAS, we still have to have, which is what this language is, we still have to have this competency determination and we still are required to have these courses. So we actually got that a lot from the, like, why don't we just make it, why didn't we just make it all the same thing? Why didn't we just make it, so now your competency determination would be you'd have to do 4 years of English, 4 years of whatever, of social studies, and why didn't we just do that? But then you're actually making the competency determination harder than what it currently is. And so we looked at, like I said, multiple policies. We talked to our attorneys, and everyone kind of agreed that just keep it at your 9th and 10th grade courses, whatever you would have been taking in order to then be able to take that MCAS and pass, should be your competency determination. You still do have to pass all these other classes, though, in order to graduate. So you need both. You need the competency determination and all the classes. So long answer, sorry, but
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. But again, similar to the other policy we were talking about earlier, as long as it's clear when people are reading it and they don't need that outside explanation to sort of understand it. And I'll go back and read this a little bit more to
It's
make sure that
confusing.
it's understandable
Yeah.
to me, but that makes sense to me. So we're confirming that the competency determination going forward isn't any less than it was before.
Correct.
Okay. So that was question one. And then were the English, you mentioned that you had consulted with the principals, assistant principals, guidance. Were the English, math, or science heads or chairs consulted just where it kind of impacts their
Not yet.
their subject areas? I would be interested to make sure that they're on board.
Sure.
That they don't see any concerns with this also. I don't know if there's a way to do that before the policy meeting, to just make sure that they don't see any glaring things that they would understand better than I would.
Sure. Yeah, we actually are meeting with that group again next week, so we can include them.
Yeah, that would just make me feel a little bit more comfortable if
no
we
problem.
include them. And then and I think, Mr. Maroney, you might have answered this, and it might have gone right over my head, but the retest that's coming up in February, March for the MCAS, I think you said the 44 seniors they can take that, but it won't, if they pass it, it won't count?
It won't apply towards their competency determination.
Yep.
All right. With the juniors that were in that category, the 100 and however many of the 141, it wouldn't.
No.
count either?
Essentially, any test after December 5th, 2024
Okay.
cannot be used for competency determination. That's why we can use the fall 2024 retest results, but everything after that,
Okay,
we cannot.
that makes sense. Okay. Well, it doesn't, but it does. I think that was all my questions. I appreciate all the work, again, that this caused and that you looked into. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So a couple of questions, just so I understand. So does the state say that every district has to have, quote, a competency determination, graduation requirements, and a certificate attainment? Is this something prescribed by the state?
Yes, yeah. So you have to have your competency determination. The certificate of attainment, is a little bit different. So
What is that?
The certificate of attainment is typically for students. In the past, it was for students who did not pass the MCAS, but they had met their other graduation requirements, and so therefore they would get, instead of a diploma, they would get a certificate of attainment. Oftentimes, a lot of the students who would receive a certificate of attainment were students who were in our LEAP program, which is something that we will be looking at and having to work on, because when we're saying English 9 and you have to pass English 9 and English 10, or geometry or algebra, the students in the LEAP program they're usually taking like foundations of math. They're not taking geometry or algebra. So those are the things that we will have to, kind of like work out, which is why we put that additional language underneath that said that, as long as they can basically have a course that is aligned to the frameworks, then, we could potentially grant them a diploma. But I would say the majority of students who get a certificate of attainment, it is typically our students in our special education programs, and it is because they haven't been able to pass the MCAS, but they've got their points, they did their 4 years of gym, they did their community service or whatever the case may be. So they've met all of the other requirements for graduation. And so therefore they were granted a certificate of attainment.
So those 42 students dating back to 2018 simply didn't pass the MCAS. Is that it? Or were there other?
We have to look, those are the group of students that we're going to be looking at. So we have to determine, we know they didn't pass the MCAS because they didn't get a diploma. So we're confident that they didn't pass the MCAS. But what we don't know is, did they pass Algebra 1? Did they pass geometry? So we
the
don't know that.
Competency requirements, then graduation requirements,
Right,
right?
right.
And then the MCAS is separate.
And
So-
because the reason that I say that is because many of those students are in the LEAP program and their course is not called Algebra 1. The course is called Foundations of Mathematics or something like that.
So is the competency, so those 42 students shall look through them
Yep.
systematically?
Yes.
And basically, if it's just MCAS, they, boom, get a
Yeah.
diploma.
Right, but like we had a student, I have a phone call right now that I have to return.
Well, you don't know if they get a GED, or?
No, we don't know.
Right.
We'll find those things out, but we have a phone call that I have to return from a family that called. Student had gotten a certificate of attainment. When, Laura and I went back through the transcript, they have passed the other courses, is what it looks like to us right now. And so therefore, under this policy, I would be contacting them and saying, it looks like your student has met the requirements for a diploma.
And it was,
the-
so it would be all about MCAS. We just don't know if that's 1 or 42.
Right, right.
Okay. And so the competency requirement was, was this plus MCAS?
The competency determinant was MCAS,
Or it was exclusively MCAS?
exclusively
And
MCAS.
now, so it wasn't those core classes that you were talking about?
Correct.
So that is brand new. We're saying, as a substitute for MCAS, this is it.
Correct.
And is that based on state guidance, or is that based on just our
Yes.
district?
Nope,
Okay.
it's state guidance, yep.
The state is saying, for the competency determination, we recommend that all of the districts adopt X.
They have said we have to come up with our own
it-
courses. So they didn't tell us the name of the courses. They were very specific about that. They pretty much said, good luck. So,
So, I mean, are we going from kind of a universal metric
Yes,
to
yeah.
350 or however many school districts different?
no, so we belong to the MASS, which is the Mass Association for School Superintendents.
Yeah.
And so we actually, the superintendent and I have a group, and really wonderful assistant superintendents and superintendents across the Commonwealth have started like shared folders, and they've all been putting their competency determinations, the new language in those folders. So as a result, we've looked at many. And then in addition to that, Murphy Hesse Toomey, our attorneys, also just issued guidance and advisory on it. And the courses that we have in our policy are the policies, from the guidance of our attorneys.
So it was just MCAS, competency determination, just 10th grade MCAS?
Correct.
Wow, okay. And then the graduation requirements, which are broader, are those still identical? You're going to retain
Yep.
what we had before is still going to be?
Those are still identical.
What we have now. Okay. I'm just looking at see if I have other questions. No, I think that helped. So just let me quickly peek through, see if I wrote any notes. No, I think I understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have some questions about this, not about what you just presented. but
I'm sorry, what?
I have questions about this. Is that okay? Are we
Yeah.
gonna-
Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah.
So, on the third page at the top, it says individual seniors who are in good standing may be released after the 165th day of the school year. And in our policy, it says 168 days.
Oh, okay, so that must be a typo.
Which one's wrong? It should be 168. Okay.
So that was, when we did this, when I copied that policy from the current website, from our website. So I just grabbed the old policy. I did not capture the new changes. So
And my other question here is, so students, I thought we had like some students, EL students did not have to take a foreign language.
some do not. They don't have to take a foreign
It says
language.
2 years of a world language must be taken, but if kids are learning English, do they also have to learn French?
Not typically. Some do that, but
I
yeah.
didn't think it was our it's written in our policy that everybody has to take 2 years of world language, and I don't believe that's true.
It's in the policy, but we do waive it. We do waive it oftentimes for students. So, I know I've personally waived sometimes for like students with, as the director of special education for students with significant.
Is there some language in here that says we can waive?
Well, I am not really, I don't believe so, yeah. I think there is,
It just said one thing in here about it. In here, it said something, like somebody, it's a superintendent or his designee could do something, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure it's also in here, because I know there are times when
yeah.
students don't have to meet those requirements, so I just would like to.
Yeah.
And it might be here, and I didn't see it on. But if it's not there, I would just like that to get. added
Yeah,
in there, that the
absolutely.
Waiver language.
Yep. And we, like I said, we did not change any of the existing. We
I know, but
Yeah.
we didn't always require, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we let kids.
Yep.
graduate.
absolutely.
I would just like it to be.
Yep.
there. Since it's practice.
That'll be specifically for EL students, the waiver of world languages.
Or it could also be for.
I think it should be for
any-
any student that requires it.
It's not- And I know chapter 74 students that can get into all the UMass campuses without ever taking foreign language, because they can't put it in their schedules. So I think it gets waived sometimes, and we should just have that language in there so we can do it. And I have one other question about this, the 44 students who are in grade 12, are they, a lot of those students who are in the LEAP program, are students who are 22 and exiting, or are those regular 12th graders?
Some of them, but not all of them.
Okay, thank you, I'm good.
I just, so once we put this in place, does this have to be approved by DESE or the state at some point?
Nope,
No.
just you.
So just us?
Yeah.
And my one question would be for the EL students, if they can't pass like the English 9 or 10, what have we done in the past? And how are we going to address that? You have any idea on that?
Well, right now they have to pass MCAS, so they keep
Yeah.
taking it until they pass. Is typically what happens. So we've talked a lot about that we feel like because we put that language, that like caveat in there, that we could look at the courses, and as long as it was what we felt was an equivalent to the curriculum frameworks, so we talked a lot with the high school teams about they call it at the high school level EL Intermediate 3, which would probably be equivalent to like maybe come closer to like an English 9. So we've talked a lot about that, or the intermediate advanced class is also. So those are the courses that. So usually they'll go through EL level 1, EL level 2, and this is if they start with like a level 1 fluency. So EL level 1, EL level 2, EL 3 intermediate, and then EL4 advanced. And so what we don't want is to them get to like EL4 advanced, and now I have to backtrack and take English 9 and 10. So that's what we would be looking at is courses. And interesting is that in all the samples that we looked at, and some of the other school districts certainly have large EL populations. Worcester has a large EL population, Everett has a large EL population, but no one else mentioned EL either in their policies. But people did have those kinds of sentences about other approved courses.
So in EL 4, it's not just literacy, it's not just language proficiency, it's also basics in English.
So when they moved to EL in the POS, we looked at the program of studies. So in the program of studies, when they move into EL level 3 and EL level 4, they're reading novels and they're writing compositions.
Okay.
So we felt like that, like those two at a minimum, they probably need to get to an EL level 3. And a lot of times, some students may take 2 EL classes at the same time. So they'll take, EL 1 and 2 at the same time, or they'll take 2 EL 1s. The schedule varies depending because there's also a time requirement. There's guidance on how many minutes students have to receive EL services. So we have to make sure we meet those. So if they come to us with a level 1 fluency, they're in EL classes for like 90 minutes a day. So it's not, I don't think it's not as like clear cut as like, oh, you take this English 9 class and you're there for the 50 minutes or whatever it is, so they get a lot more time. And so when we looked at the, like I said, the POS, we really felt like once they moved into, okay, now they're doing novels and they're doing written compositions, like we could say that that is connected to the curriculum frameworks.
Okay. And I think, and just for us as a group, we need to have this in place, hopefully like in March, so that we're using this guideline for graduation in the spring. Correct? Okay.
Ideally, it would be great if we could actually pass it
In
and approve it
February.
immediately on February
Yeah.
12th.
So if we did, meaning that if we passed in February, then you have, you can just roll right into the next, few days. Okay, anything else? Doug?
In terms of MCAS and the future and the fate and the use of MCAS, so it's, boom, no longer a graduation requirement, but it is a tool that we use to assess if the curriculum that's being taught is being learned. Is that factually? So it's one of the many tools that we learned.
It is, and it's also, it's the school's accountability, which I can tell you that both principals are extremely concerned about, and I think rightfully so. They, in the younger grades, we talked a lot about this. In the younger grades, it's kind of ingrained that the kids, for the most part, we don't have an opt out in Massachusetts. That doesn't exist. So, for the most part, most kids come to school, they take the MCAS, and life goes on. But in the high school, that's really not been the culture or what has taken place.
Yeah.
In the high school, they come because they have to, because it's a graduation requirement. And so now they've removed that. So will they come? We hope they come. We want them to come because what it's going to hurt is the Quincy High School and North Quincy High School and their accountability. But, in that, it's the whole state.
When you say
So-
accountability, you mean participation rates.
And also, if you don't take it and you're just absent that day, you get a 0.
It's also, will they show up and actually take the test, but because it's no longer a graduation requirement, will they take the test as seriously as if it was a graduation requirement?
Yeah.
In
Right.
other words, well, you can just guess how some
I would-
high
I
school
would
students
say
will
that-
manage that test because it's no longer a requirement.
I'd probably guess that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're not going to be the only ones that, the kids aren't going to take the test.
Yeah, it would be across
know?
the state.
And then they're going to have to look at that and see. what
And
they're doing.
some students will. I bet these students right here will probably take it and do really, really well and put they want scholarships. It depends on scholarships. That's really important to a lot of kids. So
We're going to ask you guys at the end of the year. We're gonna be
They're
like,
already
"So
done.
did you
They've met
take it?
their-"
How'd you do? No,
yeah,
the
but-
pressure's on.
But yeah, so some students will, but there will be a portion we think of kids that, and I think it's a cultural shift, and we just they do it in 8th grade. They come and they take it in 8th grade, and it's not a problem. So I think we just have to shift the narrative.
It's going to be a state thing, I think.
Yeah.
That they'll have to assess at some
Can I
point.
ask one final question? Because the scholarships is an incentive. How many scholarships tied to MCAS scores?
Well, the Abigail Adams is a big one.
How many
They-
did we give?
we give out a lot. I don't know, maybe, yeah, a lot, like over 100, I would say, right, at each school.
If it's 25%, it's usually 700
Yeah.
grade level.
Yeah, and then the Koplik is another one, and a couple of kids get that. So, yeah,
Okay, that's consequential.
it
an
definitely,
incentive. Yep.
yeah, it absolutely.
And that's what a state requirement, that the MCAS scores are tied to the scholarship?
Yeah, and it's for state schools. Yep. So
And does anybody outside of those two categories of scholarships consider MCAS or just those two?
I think that, the individual scholarships could potentially, I suppose, ask for MCAS results, but I don't think that's common. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You all set?
Yep.
All set? Okay, thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
both.
Appreciate it.
So next on the agenda, we have MCAS assessment update. Mr. Marani,
We
thank
just do
you.
that?
Yeah, I know.
Good job. Forgot.
So I just want to add three brief MCAS items just to keep everybody aware and informed, because there have been some changes that don't necessarily connect directly to competency determination, but are still a factor. So the first is that there has been a change in the MCAS platform. That is both for the administrators and proctors, but also for the students. So just wanted to make people aware. So in the past, it used to be, as a former principal, I would go into what was called Pearson Access Next, and I would set up the classes, make sure all the students had the appropriate accommodations through that application, and then the students would use what was called TestNav. It's now been consolidated into just MCAS Portal. And so I share that with you just in case you hear different terminology. The good news is this is not a significant shift. We've looked at it, that it's very, very similar to what it has been. So I just want to quickly share what we've done so far and what we still need to do to make sure that we as a district are ready for this new platform. So the IT department, they've already completed the site readiness certification process. So all of our sites, all of our schools are already certified and ready to go from a technology standpoint. DESE has offered multiple training sessions to administrators to help us acclimate to that platform, to make sure that when we're registering students that we're doing it correctly, that we know how to do it. So there's been multiple training sessions, and they continue to offer additional hours to check in. My own experience from that end is, it's very similar. So I quite honestly, it's user-friendly enough and similar enough that from the adult perspective, you can kind of guess your way through it, and it's pretty similar. But as we look ahead, obviously our primary concern is making sure our students feel comfortable with this new platform. So at this time, DESE has not released the 2 items, but they will be. So they've communicated that they will be, and I anticipate that it should be before the end of January, but we'll see. The 2 items are student tutorials of the new platform. So just teaching the students how to navigate the platform. So that's one. So once those are released, we can then allow students the opportunity to just practice navigating that platform. And then also computer-based practice tests. So in other words, the student tutorials, the focus is just making sure they know how to navigate the actual testing platform. And then we have student practice tests within that same platform that will actually allow students not just to practice navigation, but also answering MCAS-style questions. So those are kind of 2 components that DESE has yet to release, but if you go on the website, it says coming soon, and they've communicated in their updates that it should be made available within the next few weeks. So once we get that, we can certainly make sure that we prioritize giving our students the opportunity to make sure it's just a seamless transition. And just one added detail, because I think it's worth acknowledging, the IT team, like right now, the majority of our students are taking their MCAS via their Chromebooks. And so what that looks like for a student is to log in, they have to go to the bottom left. There's a little icon there that they select, and in the past it said TestNav. So the IT team went out of their way to make sure that they're going through the same process, so that the only difference is instead of clicking TestNav, it will just say MCAS. And so that's something that we'll educate the students on anyways, but down to that detail, making sure that none of these platform updates are going to be standing in the way from a student being able to convey what they know and don't know. So obviously that's a priority for us, and so I just wanted to share that with all of you. As I mentioned, in my opinion so far, I'd say the learning curve on both ends is minimal. All the features are the same. So, some of the features are, the note-taking feature, the calculator, the ruler, depending on the test they're taking. Those are all still there, so that isn't changing. Most of the changes, quite frankly, are just aesthetic. So they're just different colors. They just look a little bit different. But from a functionality standpoint, it's almost the same. And then also, it does appear, again, just to share sentiment, it does appear to be an enhancement. It does appear to be a good change, simply because now it's taking all the different, like the MCAS Service Center used to be a separate website, and then you had Pearson Access Next. They're consolidating all of that. So from an administrative standpoint, I really appreciate it, because if we want to find tutorials, if we want to see practice tests, if we want to see any particular student registration information, it's now just at one place. So, overall, I think it's a good change, but one that I wanted to make you all aware of. The next change that I want to share is just that we have the addition of the bilingual Spanish and English test. So effective this year, 2025, there will now be a bilingual Spanish and English accommodation that students can qualify for. So the criteria for that is if they have been in the U.S. for less than 3 years, and this is obviously for Spanish-speaking students, but they've been in the U.S. for 3 years or less, and then also that their fluency levels are beginner or intermediate. So if they were, in the U.S. for 2 years, but they have advanced level proficiency, they wouldn't necessarily have to take that test. It wouldn't be the accommodation they would get. The only exception to this is the ELA test, so that there is no Spanish-English ELA test, but all the other assessed subjects are in fact, this version is now available. Just a couple features, just to kind of tell you what students might encounter. So for computer-based version of this, they now have what they call stacked text. So in other words, if there's a passage that a student is reading, they'll see the first paragraph will be in Spanish, the second paragraph will be the English version of that. So as they navigate through the reading passages, they'll be able to see the Spanish and the English version. In addition to that, they can toggle between the directions that are on there. So the navigation, so instead of calculator or instead of ruler, they can toggle that so that translates to Spanish. So in my opinion, I think that's a great help to students, where we want to make sure we're assessing the desired the specific standards, and we certainly wouldn't want a student's inability or language barrier of what the ruler icon is be something standing in the way of a correct answer or not. So again, just making you all aware of that. We do have more work to do, because this is new, as far as just making sure our outreach to all the schools, the EL teachers, and all the teachers are aware of this and know how to proceed. But again, just wanted to make everybody here aware. And we will still obviously have the bilingual word-to-word dictionaries and glossaries for EL students and former EL students. So that's not changing. And then just very, very briefly, I just wanted to share the testing window timeline. So we already went through high school, so I'll kind of go over that. But I just will mention that even though we have retest, we still have spring MCAS coming up for high school students. So we have ELA is March 25th and March 26th. That's for high school ELA. For math, it's May 20th and May 21st. And then for biology, it's June 4th and June 5th. So those are the MCAS dates. DESE designates those dates at the high school level, so we don't pick those dates. They're given to us. So that's consistent across the state. However, in grades 3 through 8, for ELA, the window opens March 24th and will stay open until April 18th. So the ELA testing grades 3 through 8 will be completed between March 24th and April 18th. For math and science, so just a reminder, science is only grade 5 and only grade 8, but for math and science, it's April 28th, so after the break, through May 23rd. And the new item that I just wanted to share, I know we've talked about it before, but just as a reminder, we do have the civics test that is now operational. So that is an MCAS like the other MCAS. Our 8th grade, it's just 8th grade, but they will be taking the civics test. And that will be, so the window for that opens the same date as math and science, April 28th, but that window goes longer till June 6th. So as far as how we schedule this, because we want to make sure every school, when they're implementing or facilitating the MCAS, that adequate tech support is available and accessible. So what we do is the IT team, along with the curriculum department, we work with the principals to get their preferred dates and coordinate a district-wide schedule to make sure that every school has the support they need, to make sure that if there's a tech issue, which as a principal I've certainly encountered a few, but you always have that tech support that comes in, and it usually gets rectified pretty quickly. So just a reminder, as I mentioned, civics is operational. Last year was the field test, so there's really at this time, once it's operational, it's pretty much now just embedded. There's no anticipated change beyond this year. It will continue to be operational. And the science is now a field test. If you remember last year, it was an expanded pilot. It is now a field test. Right now, DESI is saying it's a field test for this year and next year with the idea of it being operational thereafter. So 2 years of field test. Essentially what that means, and I will plan on presenting on civics and science in more detail at a later meeting, but essentially what that means is for session 1 and session 2, there will be embedded newer pilot questions or field test questions. They will not count towards student results. So they'll be embedded in session 1 and session 2, but they won't count towards the results when we look at the data. And so just to go back to the scheduling, we hope to begin the scheduling process for MCAS with schools next week. We hope to have the dates firmed up and ready to go prior to February break, so then principals can start their outreach and communicate with their school communities about what those school-specific dates are. So I tried to go through it briefly, but of course, if you have any questions or want any more details, feel free.
Thank you. Thanks again for all that. Quick questions. The first item you mentioned, the change in platform, you said that students would have the opportunity to kind of play around with that tutorial and the practice tests. How will they get that opportunity? Will teachers kind of deliver that in class? Will it come in media? Will it come in SSB? Or when will that, how will that be rolled out?
Yeah, so I do think that to some degree, the school might select different time depending on the school needs. I can certainly see this, and I'll go back to my days in middle school and elementary. I would definitely be taking advantage of the media blocks at the elementary level to give them that time to do it. But also remember too, that in addition to the tutorials, they'll have the content-specific practice test too. So I could see that occurring within the class because it directly relates. So what is most likely going to happen is you'll see the tutorial within the media blocks, and then you'll see the actual content specific within the related subjects.
Okay. It won't just go home in like a principal newsletter that says, well, if your student wants to do this thing, and you know how many students from there will do it on their own.
No,
Okay,
no,
so
no,
it'll
yeah.
be within the school
Yeah,
day. Yeah, okay.
quite honestly, I'm checking the webpage every day to see when it's released because it's important that we make sure our students get as much practice as possible.
Awesome. That's great. And then, yes, I'm glad in 2025, we finally have a bilingual MCAS alternative accommodation, so that's great. Unfortunately, not the one with the most amount of text, but at least it's something. So there's that. And yeah, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Jump into, at this point, we have the consent agenda, which we need a roll call vote for the minutes for January 8th and the regular and executive session minutes.
Do we need a motion?
Motion to approve? Second by Mr. Guttrow. Roll call. Yes.
Mr. Gattro?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No additional business. Communications for the upcoming school committee meetings. We have a regular meeting on February 12th, March 12th, and 26th, and April 9th, 2025, at 6:30 PM. And then we have subcommittee meetings at 6 PM, February 5th, Athletics and Wellness, Teaching and Learning. Yes.
So should we be adding policy to that list as well on February 5th,
Yes.
the subcommittee
Yep.
meetings?
And athletics and wellness is going to need to be rescheduled, so that will not be on the bill.
Okay.
Okay, so no athletics and wellness, but,
So we're going
Yes.
to put policy on that.
Yeah, so
Day.
teaching and learning and policy,
okay.
right, there were two.
Yeah, policy,
On the
teaching and
5th?
learning. Yeah,
Yes,
not
yes,
athletics
yeah.
and wellness.
Yes. So February 5th will be best.
Okay. Reports of subcommittees. Mrs. Lebo to review the December 16th Teaching and Learning Subcommittee meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not on.
If it doesn't sound like you're on, there's something going on with the microphones, but you will be on the TV.
Oh,
So-
no, this is one.
He said just to go.
There was a joint meeting of the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Subcommittee on December 16th. It started out with Director Kim Conley presenting the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Program Improvement Plan. A couple of really interesting things came from that presentation. One is that the workforce is really declining for educators. There are so many fewer people going into education, and that it's going to be a problem across the board. One of the things that she's focusing on, and Quincy's focusing on, is what she called before grow your own, or developing a pipeline of new educators and getting students through the bachelor's degree. And she has partnered with several colleges, Regis, LaSalle, and Stonehill, through grants to kind of get students in high school to start thinking about going into education. And there's money for them to do it and opportunities for mentoring. So it's really an exciting thing, and hopefully we'll see that not too soon. Unfortunately, it's going to take a while to grow that pipeline. But she's doing a terrific job of getting that in there and assisting the students to get through education majors. Also, we talked a little bit about the Raising Multicultural Kids program that we have in 2 schools, I believe now. 4 schools. Oh, excellent. I'd love to see it in all of our schools, but it sounds like a great thing. We looked it up, and she gave us a little bit of information about it. It really sounded good. The other thing is Mrs. Perdios requested we think about adding support for LGBTQ students and expanding the LPAC across the district also. And Ms. Vergoli made a motion that we accept her program improvement plan, and we did. We talked a little bit about open positions before we move on, and it seems like the paraprofessionals are still an issue, constantly an issue, as you could see from our budget too. Then Kim Quinn presented the math program improvement plan. And just talked about the 11 math interventionists and specialists who work with elementary and middle school kids who need Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Ms. Vergoli was concerned about the grade 5 MCAS scores. Ms. Quinn agreed with him that it was an issue. And one of the things that we're offering now is we're doing a Foundations of Math course for our educators. The goal is for it to be eligible for PDPs or possibly a credit to incentivize our elementary school teachers in taking this course. Mr. Vergoli made a motion to approve that program, we did, and then we heard about the literacy program from Mrs. Vaughn. Again, a wide range of targeted interventions for Tier 2 and 3 students on focusing on improving their student outcomes. It was interesting to hear that Cursive Writing Club is going on, and all students in grade 3 through 5 received a handbook for practice of cursive writing, which has been eliminated in our schools for so long, so it's nice to see that that's back again. And that's, the rest of the minutes are online.
Okay, very good. Mr. Guttrow?
I'll be brief. We had a policy committee meeting on January 8th. We spoke about all 3 issues tonight. At the policy committee meeting, we approved proposed revision of the school committee policy section 9.2 of the school year and the school calendar. Again, we discussed that and amended it, full committee tonight. In addition, we made a motion to approve the draft 2025-2026 school calendar that passed out of subcommittee. We had a discussion tonight that will be up for a vote subsequently. And finally, the third item that we took up was the draft 2025-2026 school committee meeting calendar as amended. That came out of policy committee. We discussed tonight. That will be voted on subsequently.
Thank you. Mrs. Perdios, Special Education Subcommittee meeting.
Thank you. We had a meeting of the Special Education Subcommittee on January 15th at 6 o'clock. Myself and Mrs. Lebo were present, and we had 2 items on the agenda that night. Special education team under the leadership of Julie Graham came to present on the rights and responsibilities, and that was a very detailed, really great presentation that I would encourage people to go to the website and click on for more details on that. As it's, if I summarized it, it would not do nearly as good as just going to the presentation itself. So I encourage you to do that. And then the second item on the agenda, we had the CPAC, the Quincy Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Here we had Sarah Wood and Melissa Ricci here to discuss their goals for this year and introduce the board members for this year. Their goals for last year included providing resources and educational opportunities to support mental health through educational presentations, providing training opportunities for staff and caregivers, continued engagement with preschool, out-of-district, and RDLC students and families, and continued engagement with transitional age students and families. Ms. Wood spoke about the challenges for families of students who will continue to need supports after they age out of our program at age 22. They're just doing great work as volunteer parents with special needs children of their own, and I appreciate their dedication to helping QPS and our special ed families. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, we need a motion to go into executive session, and we will not be returning after the session. So motion by Mrs. Lebo, second by Mrs. Perdios, and thank you, and, oh, roll call, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Mr. Gattro.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone.